Hello, this is Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to do a 40K discussion and we're going to talk about the leagues of Votann. We're going to talk about detachment bonuses, judgment tokens, faction bonuses, beam and hunter weapons. I know I spelled that wrong compared to what it says in the codex. That's okay. And then what I see as the potential strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to tell you guys up front, I'm not going to post any actual data sheets or anything that could cost me my employment with Games Workshop. I am a Games Workshop employee. I am on their events team. And I'm not going to do anything to put that in jeopardy because I actually enjoy doing it. And I'm also going to state from the outset that none of the information that I'm giving you is from Games Workshop. So this may or may not be accurate. So I just wanted those disclaimers up front. The detachment bonuses, plus there's a little bit more here. There's actually quite a bit in this book that we've all probably seen. But you get Hero of the Oathbound, and that's one call per detachment. That's basically the same as like the one Tau commander, the one war boss. Every army pretty much has something like that. Warriors and Pioneers gain obsects. That's troops, and then I believe the Pioneers are the bikes. I'd have to double check that, but that seems right. Study, advance, and so this is a data sheet ability, but it's army wide, so it's going to be like shock assault for Marines. Here we go for orcs, but what that does is you get to ignore movement modifiers, and you can only advance 3 inches. You don't roll for it, it's just 3 inches. So most of the troops and infantry have a movement of 5, so if they advance they just move 8. They don't actually roll for their advance rolls. Accelerated units just advance 6 inches. That's it. And that's pretty interesting. I like that. I feel like that's a very good kind of dwarfy feeling rule. I do like that one. Void armor is the other one. And again, I haven't seen a data sheet that doesn't have both of these things. Void armor is basically everything gets armor of contempt, which any of you that know me know that I'm not necessarily a fan of this rule. I've played with and against both Marines and Chaos Space Marines. And it's one of those where when I'm playing against it, it just feels bad. Like it doesn't feel very good. Like, and I've mentioned it when I shoot rockets at something. Like if I shoot a dreadnought, one of the better orc anti-tank weapons that you can take on most anything is now neg 2 3 damage, and it always was, but now into any kind of power armor it's neg 1, and then if they have duty eternal it's 2 damage. So it just doesn't feel good shooting a redemptor with my anti-tank quote unquote tank bustas, and just knowing that it's like 4 up for 2 damage, and that's if I even get to hit. So it's one of those where I'm not a huge fan of Armor of Contempt. I do understand why it became a rule. Anyway, sorry, a little bit of a digression. In addition to Armor of Contempt, Void Armor means you can't reroll the hit, the wound, or the damage. Again, being an Orc player, that's not going to influence or affect me a lot. But this is, it's interesting. I don't necessarily have an issue with this. I see this as a good, powerful faction and good, powerful faction rules. There's nothing wrong with them. And as you see later on, where I start to kind of see this as kind of a silly codex is when we start to get into how points efficient everything is and how it all stacks with everything else. So you've got 3 new weapon types, and I think there's technically only 2 new weapon types. There's a hunter, which is not spelled that way, again, and then there's beam, and then you have the rail guns. The rail guns, it's like the Magna rail rifle or something, and it's basically just a Tau rail gun. I think the small ones do, I think it was at D3 plus 3. I could be wrong on that, but that seems right. But they all ignore invulns, not just the big ones. And then the big ones that you get on whatever that land fortress thing is are like 2d3 plus 6 damage. So they ignore invulns, and wound rolls of 6 do carryover damage, which isn't technically mortal wounds. So if you have a feel no pain against mortal wounds, you won't get to use that against this weapon. But if you just have a regular feel no pain, you'll get to use it, obviously. I'm not a fan, and again, you'll see why as we kind of progress. Why I am not super thrilled about this either. I don't care about the no invulns so much. Like, I don't take any kind of issue with having some guns that ignore invulns. It's weird that starting with Tau, it's like every codex since Tau has it. Beam weapons are, so they're actually pretty cool. I really like this mechanic. They draw a line of sight from shooter to the target. They work a lot like the Tau Relic Fusion or Mortarian's Pistol. What's really neat is they can only affect eligible units, so you can't use it as like a sniper rifle to actually like hit a character that happens to be within the beam's path, because it specifically states there that it can only affect eligible units. If you don't have line of sight, it doesn't affect them. Like there's a lot of good interactions there. I do like the beam weapons. I think it's a really neat mechanic, and I'm really glad to see something like that. Hunter weapons are basically just heavy weapons, but they're not heavy, so you don't have the penalty for moving and shooting. And vehicles that have hunter weapons don't have the penalty for shooting them while they're engaged. So it's just kind of a way to work around the heavy weapons penalties and then still have them for the few heavy weapons that might exist in the codex. Judgment tokens are where the book starts to get a little bit silly, and this is where you're going to start to see some of the things that I've said where I'm like, okay, this is, you'll see later why I don't agree with this rule. So what they are is they're just a set of tokens that you can place on an enemy unit, and they only get them after they do specific things. So an enemy unit gets a judgment token whenever they kill a Votann unit. Each time that unit completes an action or a psychic action, or you can select an enemy unit within range of an objective marker, and then they get one. And I believe there's a strat that also will just put one on somebody or treat them as if they had one more. I haven't dug through all the strats yet, so I don't know. There's also a custom faction that kind of works like Farsight, so it'll like treat one as if it had an additional judgment token. That was actually in the battle report on Warhammer TV. So there is that. If I kill you, if I'm playing against you and I kill your unit, I get a judgment token. If I complete an action or a psychic action, I get one. And if I control objectives, I get one. There's a warlord trait to transfer them. And they always stay with the unit even if they leave the table. So if I have a judgment token and I get into a transport and then I get back out, I still have the judgment token. If I pick them up, like it's like Zephyrum, and I pick them up and then redeploy them, they still have one. If I have one judgment token, your hit rolls of 6 auto wound. If I have 2 judgment tokens, your hit rolls of 5 auto wound. And then if I have 3, your hit rolls of 4 auto wound. And it caps at 3, and they're not like a currency. You don't just spend them like marker lights and you go, okay, I'm going to spend this to get this. And then there's a little bullet point in there that says the hits that automatically wound due to a judgment token treat the wound roll as a 6. So again, if we go back to those rail guns, if your ballistic skill is 3 and I have 3 judgment tokens, if you get a hit roll of 4, all right, that automatically wounds and counts as a wound roll of 6. So you're skipping the whole wound roll altogether and instantly treating it as a 6. So now you're just going to throw these dice at me, and you have a 50% chance of I don't get an armor save, and a 50% chance of, like, again, like, let's say I have a unit of 10 models, and you shoot those 10 models. Not only do I not get an armor save, I'm probably picking up all 10 of those to that one gun based off of a single die roll. Like that's not a great interaction. And I will say that a lot of auto wound mechanics have gotten nerfed within a reasonable amount of time after their release. AdMech had one, got nerfed. Hail of Doom got nerfed, and that was only shooting. So the thing with judgment tokens is they're always on. I don't think they're going to affect Overwatch because Overwatch explicitly states you can only hit on a 6. But it will actually mean that your hit rolls of 6 do auto wound, regardless of how many judgment tokens you have. So again, it's one of those where I don't understand the thinking here, because every time they've released a mechanic like this, it has been nerfed. Faction bonuses, we're just going to take a brief look at them. Conglomerate, and again, I'm not giving you full names. I'm just kind of giving an overview, and we're only going to touch on a few of them. Conglomerate gives you plus 4 inches to the range of all your guns, and you get army-wide invulns. And it's based off of what your save is. Like, if your save is 4+, you get a 5+ invuln. But you also have Armor of Contempt, so it takes -2 to push you from your 4 to your 5. So it's actually pretty solid. Hegemony, or hegemony, sorry, English is a language I speak. Hegemony, those guys get Shock Assault and +1 Strength on the charge, so it's a pretty solid melee-centric one, and they do have some good melee-centric units. You know, they don't get a ton of attacks, I noticed, but they do have some good melee-centric units. Regulates, get +1 toughness and reroll morale. And most of this stuff is at least toughness 4. So +1 toughness is actually really good. Your troops are 11 points a model. At T4, they could become T5 with a 4-up save and Armor of Contempt, you know, is pretty good for 11-point models. And then, like I said before, custom, you got a Farsight style +1 Judgement token. I've looked through a few of them. They all seem like really good options. So it's one of those where it's worth like exploring those. All right, so we're going to look at the strengths of the army based off of what I've seen. And again, this is just a quick glance. This isn't a deep dive. I don't have the full book. I'm just kind of going off of what I've seen and what I think is kind of silly based off of just reading it. Their strengths are everything. Like this codex does pretty much everything well. When your hits auto wound, it's extremely powerful. And like I mentioned before, these are mechanics that have been nerfed in almost every faction that has had them. They're extremely durable for their cost. You know, like I said, when you've got army-wide Armor of Contempt, these are cheaper than Sisters of Battle. Like the base troops are cheaper by I think 1 point. I think Sisters are 12 points and these are 11. They're T4. They have a 4-up save instead of a 3-up save, but they're 1 toughness higher. They have a mechanic with the medics where I believe they can treat the first failed save as 0 damage. They come in minimum units of 10, so there's a lot going on there. You can get them to T5 for the base troops, you know, so and you can get them in invuln. So it's one of those where they are going to be extremely durable for their cost, and their damage output is also going to be really good. Exo armor units, it's going to be kind of like their Terminators. Those things look really durable, especially when you consider their points cost and every other rule and mechanic that they get to interact with. They have a 2+ base save. They come stock with a 4++. You could actually shift that to something else. They get Armor of Contempt, or really it's just Void Armor, you know. So it's going to be Void Armor, so you get Armor of Contempt and no rerolls of any kind against them. 2+ save, 4+ invuln. They start at T5. If you take the +1 toughness, you'll actually get them to T6. There's a spell that will give you +1 toughness and give you a 6-up Feel No Pain. And then they have 2 wounds and baked in Duty Eternal. And they're 35-ish points a model. They're actually like as cheap as a Mega Knob. And I would take these over a Mega Knob any day. You know, Mega Knobs are T5 and they're 3 wounds, but they don't have Armor of Contempt. They don't have an invuln. They don't have good guns. These have pretty solid guns. These things, their melee is solid. It's not like crazy good. I believe the Exo Armor guys, I think they're Hearthguard. They fight at Strength 8 and neg 2 damage, and then they have effectively like a Power Sword option that gives them a bonus attack. So again, you know, you've got a lot there. They have access to a transhuman strat. They're just going to be a nightmare. At 35 points a model, you could literally take 30 of them and have it be about half your list. So you're going to have 30 wounds that are all going to be T6 in this one specific build with a 2-up base save, a 4-up invuln. You can give one of them a 6-up Feel No Pain and have it be T7. They all have Duty Eternal. It's called something else, obviously. And they have access to a transhuman strat. Like, this is going to be a very good unit. Expect to see these on the table. I think the Pioneers are solid. I'd have to see them a little bit more, but they look good. And the tanks, the land fortresses, those things are silly good. You know, you can get them to T9, for example, 2-up save. All their shooting has rend or AP, you know, so everything has rend. Even just the base bolt guns are neg 1. So again, it's just really weird. It kind of like the guns really remind me of the Tau Codex when it first released, but they're just going to be more efficient because their ballistic skill is 3 and their hit rolls auto wound as soon as you start putting judgment markers on things. The army has super easy reroll access, so that's going to be another strength. There's a couple different strats that allow you to reroll in different phases. You get a captain, you can upgrade him to a chapter master. So again, if I have 3 judgment tokens, you can slap a unit with full hit rerolls from your chapter master, and then you could just fish for 4s and ignore the wound roll altogether. Weaknesses, if you can call them that, really, they do have some weaknesses. They're not glaring. Most of the units are slow. You know, you're looking at 5 inches for infantry, 10 or 12 for the vehicles and the bikes. But again, void armor with easy access to invulns or +1 toughness will kind of compensate them. And their big land fortress is a transport, so it's kind of like a land raider. So you're going to be able to put some dudes in there and move them up and down the board a little bit better. If you decide to, you can actually give your Terminators, I forget what they're called, the Hearthguard, you can give them the teleporter instead of the invuln. And if you do that, then they can deep strike and you can redeploy them and stuff like that. So there's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot. I saw a few ways to kind of increase your mobility in there. Um, the land fortress is actually like, it's like 250 points roughly to give it the big dumb Magna Rail rifle, and it's effectively just a T9 or T8 depending on your faction land raider. So there's again just a lot of good good options in there. There's little to no mortal wound protection that I saw, and that makes them kind of feel like Marines. You know, I didn't really come across anything that was like, you get a feel no pain, you get a feel no pain against mortals. There might be a custom faction that does it, but I haven't come across it yet. Um, you know, but again, I also don't have the full book. Most ranged weapons are 24 inches or shorter. Obviously, there's the one faction that'll increase them by 4 inches. I could see that one getting a lot of play to give them more range and more versatility with their guns. And also because it gives you invulns. I do see that one being really good. I feel like their shooting is going to be very similar to Sisters, where you have a lot of high rend weapons that can do damage, but you have to be relatively close to get them in. The difference is going to be they do have a strat that lets them shoot while they're engaged, so that's another thing to kind of keep in mind. But you know, all in all, I just think that's where they're at for their weaknesses. Like, there's going to be some armies that can outrange them. There's going to be some armies that can do different things with them. I think they're just extremely efficient from what I've seen. Everything's super cheap. You've got 11-point troops. You know, you've got 35-point Terminators that do what other Terminators do, and they can do it better. Auto wounding with axe, and again, I know I've said this a lot, but auto wounding as an army-wide mechanic is just going to be what really hurts everything. When they're extremely cheap and you can spam a lot of units, and then all your units can auto wound against things, and the tokens, like I said, like I'm getting, if I'm playing you and you have this army, you're putting those tokens on me simply because I'm playing the game. They've got good faction rules. Like I said, none of them are really bad. Some look better than others. But I didn't see any that were really just like, oh, this is terrible. I would never play this. I feel like the two winners from what I saw are the Conglomerate and the Regulates. The Invulns and the +1 toughness seem to be really good. The Regulates, you also get to reroll leadership checks, so that one's less good, I guess. But the +1 toughness is so good, especially when you have all the other rules layering that they have. But like I said, none of them really look bad. They've got some great cheap strats. They've got transhuman auto hits. You know, they've got a like a combat revival strat for some of their units. Like there's a lot of things going on there that make this just a good strong army. I do feel like they're going to be extremely powerful on release, and I understand that this has been kind of the norm. I do feel like Chaos Space Marines were pretty well in balance. And really, I think a lot of Eldar was, there was only one or two glaring things in that book where it was like, okay, this is rough. And obviously the Harlequins were a little rough, but again, the big thing with the Harlequins was that everything was just so cheap. And I think that's where this book is that like it's super strong on release, but part of it is because literally everything is just so cheap. Again, auto wounding, extremely powerful mechanic, and they do it in every phase. And I would look for some kind of nerf or points hike once GW sells the models. You know, it seems to be the business pattern And again, I got in 8th. Well, I got back in 8th edition. I stopped for a while, but it just seems like late 8th and all through 9th, it's release a super strong codex, sell a bunch of models, nerf it. There's been a few codexes that didn't really follow that pattern, but it definitely kind of feels like it. It seems a little overtuned, like at a glance, and I could be way off. I've only seen the GW battle report and then glanced through some of the leaks of the codex. But it does seem a little overtuned, even when compared to some of the other recent releases. Like I said, I think CSM was a fairly well balanced codex. I feel like from what I've seen of the Demons book, it's going to be pretty well balanced. There's some good things in there, and it's going to be a good codex. But I don't think it's going to be like this. So I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong on my kind of thinking on this. I'm not a big fan of Games Workshop dwarves anyway. I remember them from Fantasy, and I didn't enjoy them in Fantasy. I play a lot of Blood Bowl, and I never enjoy playing them in Blood Bowl. So it's one of those where, I might have just a bias going into this, and I understand that. But everybody let me know what you think in the comments section, and maybe kind of, let me know what your takeaways are from the leaks if you've seen them. As always, our Patreon tiers, $1.50 is a hatchling. You get mentions on the Patreon page. Firebirds, $5, 24-hour early access to all content, and ability to vote on future content. Phoenix is $10. You get all of that and a sticker. And then Immortals, $20, all of that, and a special shout out at the end of the video. Speaking of, we're going to shout out our 2 Immortals, Captain Too Tall and the real Donnie G. Again, you guys are awesome. You've you've been supportive of me, and I appreciate that. And that's allowed me to, again, just rebuild my terrain and kind of, get the supplies I need to start running events and stuff. Thanks for watching. All the relevant links in the description. Check out the Teespring store for some cool themed merch. We've got a Twitch channel. We've been doing some hobby streams. We stream games now. We're looking to stream every Thursday. So, check us out on Twitch. Help me get 50 followers. We're going to start doing a giveaway on Twitch for the 50 followers. All right, guys. Thank you.